Hey there everybody, BonOakley here with a Team Fortress 2 gameplay commentary, and tonight I'm going to be playing as the Pyro as always, and I'm going to be talking about the great utility flare gun known as the Detonator. Now, the Detonator has a lot of uses, from being a decent flare gun to being great at dealing damage to a group of enemies at once, though the main use that people like to use for it is, get ready, the flare jumping ability. What, did you expect me to do a channel meme? Anyway, ever since the Jungle Inferno update, the poor secondary has been overshadowed by something that essentially does its job better, the thermal thruster. With this new secondary appearing on the scene, does the Detonator have any use in mobility anymore? Well, let's have a look, shall we? So, to begin with, there are many differences when looking at the two. The Detonator is a side grade to the original flare gun. In return for doing minus 25% damage to enemies and taking 50% plus damage, this weapon allows you to detonate the flare at any point while it's still travelling. This is done by pressing the Alt Fire button, and instead of full crits, the Detonator only does mini crits. However, this isn't to say it's bad now that it does less damage. Being able to detonate a flare gun is a huge benefit when there are multiple enemies clustered next to each other. For example, if there are enemies surrounding the payload and not letting your team push, the Detonator is great for hitting them all at once. This lets you damage more enemies at once for the price of a little less damage. This makes it much easier to take down multiple enemies rather than having to focus on one at a time. Now, luckily for us Pyros, it does come with the hidden ability of, you guessed it, flare jumping! Alright, I had to do it just once, okay. Anyway, flare jumping is essentially the way Pyros used to move around more freely before the Jungle Inferno update. In fact, that was the only other way of gaining additional mobility for a long time. What flare jumping essentially does is boost a Pyro up in the air, allowing them to reach higher places or ledges they wouldn't normally have access to. Think of it as the Pyro's version of rocket jumping, but slightly less effective. But what's the point of using the Detonator for moving around slightly better when the thermal thruster is so much better in every single way? Well, okay, not every way. You see, if you take a look at the stats of the thruster, it deals no damage directly. It only deals damage when landing on an enemy directly. Again, comparing to Soldier, this is essentially man-treads for the Pyro. However, who in their right mind would actually try this in the middle of a fight, not to mention the fact it does a whopping 30 damage? That's certainly worth it, huh? While it is certainly fun flying around the map, it takes away a secondary slot that helps keep them alive. The most irritating thing to happen is having an enemy shoot you from afar and you can't do anything unless you try and run at them. And even then, they can kill you before you even reach them. Also, good luck trying to actually sneak behind them if they notice you. Man, if there was only a way of having extra mobility as well as being able to deal damage to people from a safe distance. Introducing the Detonator. The Detonator is certainly not the best secondary weapon, let alone the best flare gun, but it allows for some nice abilities while being a decent weapon. Another downside about the thermal thruster that I haven't mentioned yet is the fact that it takes forever to holster. This means that even if you get a moment to react, you'll have to wait for a painfully long time in order to get your primary or melee out. It's even slower than the extinguisher, and combining the two will most definitely ensure your death. With the Detonator, you have no holster penalties, which allows you to fire almost instantly, and is slightly faster when paired with the degreaser. However, the Detonator certainly lacks in areas too. For one, the force of the blast from the detonated flare is nowhere near as powerful as the thrusters, but I mean that's to be expected since the thermal thruster is a jetpack after all. Another stat that the thermal thruster hasn't mentioned is the fact that it reduces your fall damage by a lot. I don't know the specific number, but it reduces the damage to basically nothing. The 50% plus damage to self makes flare jumping with the Detonator quite situational in terms of gaining mobility. Since you take more damage, you'll have to rely on using it when you have plenty of health, overhealed with a medic, or when you think the time is right. Overall, both the Detonator and the thermal thruster are better than one another in their own way. While the thruster gives the ability to move freely around the map, it leaves the Pyro having to defend himself with only close range weapons, which makes it hard to stop a lot of classes as most of their weapons can do decent damage from afar, such as the pistol, revolver and SMG. The Detonator is great for dealing with crowds and giving more mobility to Pyro, as little as it may give. However, the flare jumping can be quite situational at times and can leave you vulnerable due to the massive downside of taking more damage. What's your take on the matter? Let me know down below. For the previous poll I did, the results were 50-50, which is interesting to me. Anyway, give this video a like and subscribe as it really does help with the channel's growth. Thanks for watching, this has been your friendly neighborhood Pyro BonOakley, and as always, I will see you in the next one. See ya!